So that was, so we'll vote on this next month, which will be September. All right, item 9, receive the financial advisor's recommendation concerning the district's proposed 2023 tax rate, et cetera.
Good afternoon. In your packet, you should have a memo like this. The logo on top. And just to remind you that the tax rate setting process is a 2-step process. So all you're doing today is authorizing publication of your total tax rate. Next month, you'll hold your public hearing and then adopt that tax rate. Keeping in mind that you should publish the highest rate you consider, because you can always come down from that without any issues. If you want to go up from that, you have to republish. So I'll run through the numbers really quickly. Your certified value, you have currently just over 1.063 billion in certified value, with about 51 million uncertified. So still hasn't settled yet with the appraisal district. Last year, your certified was at 1.015 billion. So it's about a 9.76% increase year over year. Last year, you did levy 10.44 cents. If you flip to the second page, there's 2 scenarios for you to look at. Just the first one being if you kept a flat tax rate from last year. I'll run through the boxes really quickly. The top number, 10.44, is what you levied last year, assuming 99% collections. You would have generated 1.049 million. This year, if you were to levy the 10.44, you would generate 1.15 million. The parity rate, if you want to raise the same amount of funds as last year, you would need 9.5 cents. And then the M&O rate to balance the budget, it says 12 cents, but based on the changes in the current draft, you would need about 13.5 cents to balance your budget. Each value of a penny is 110,000. So middle of the box and the top box would be what the average tax bill change would be. Last year's average homestead was $305,298, meaning that your residents paid $319 in taxes, MUD taxes. This year's average homestead is $336,740. So that average tax bill would be $352, or a net $33 increase over last year. So roughly $3 a month in additional taxes. If you shift down to the bottom box, looking at that second line, if you were to levy the 11.5302 cents, you would generate 1.272 million instead of the 1.15 million. And then in the middle box, the difference being $69 to the average tax bill. So roughly $6 a month increase. And then all the way at the bottom box, with respect to your total tax rate, you can see that the parity rate is about 9.5 cents. Because you are a developed district, you are limited with what you can do to 3.5% increase of your average tax bill. However, there is unused increment that you have the ability to use. So it's the difference between your voter approved rate and what you've levied over the last 3 years. And so with that unused increment, that's how you get to the 11.5302 cents.
So your comment about mandatory tax election rate, that's basically the maximum we can go without having an election.
Correct.
So what is that increase from 10.44 to 11.53?
It would be a $69 increase to the
Percentage wise?
Oh, no,
Maybe
it's an extra $36 in delta between scenario 1 and scenario 2.
Correct.
It's a 20.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting at is what would the tax increase, the rate increase percentage wise be from last year's tax rate to the new, or from the current tax rate to the new proposed tax?
Box, if you look at that percentage change to 21.82%.
Is that tax rate or is that income?
That's tax bill, and that's household increase.
Yeah, okay, but that's not tax rate.
Correct.
So what is our current tax rate?
10.44 cents.
Okay. When's the last, have we ever raised our tax rate in the last 15 years? In Mud 7? Does anybody know?
So.
I don't
think
remember.
that's happening.
I don't remember
We
going-
just boasted that we decreased it.
Yeah, because I mean, we took a pretty aggressive, if I'm not mistaken, this district, but otherwise, I was a pretty aggressive reduction once the district paid off its debt a couple
Mhm.
years ago. And we got pretty aggressive with the reduction.
It's been 5 years since we paid that debt off. So if we left it at the 10.44, what would our deficit be, our projected deficit, instead of 191,000 and change, what would it be at 10.44?
110,000 more.
Three, deficit of 317 at current tax rate. This is the alternate scenario.
We would really need revenues to bail us out on that one.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that the unused increment calculation will be changing starting next year. And so you won't be able to generate as much revenue from an unused increment in future years as what you can this year. So we're already pretty limited as a result of Senate Bill 2 to 3.5% as developed district, and then you have the unused increment for the last 3 years. Going forward, that unused increment, instead of it being percentage that you left behind, it will be the actual tax dollars that you left behind, which is a lower number. I don't want to get too long, but it's going to be a lower amount that you'll be able to pull forward.
So given that there could potentially be significantly higher expenses in the next few years with
Correct.
AC water lines and new sewer plants or wastewater treatment plants and that kind of thing, I guess if we don't raise our rate, we could kind of get ourselves in a box
Correct,
where we are behind
correct. As you
and
go-
unable to raise the rate enough.
Yeah, because that percentage is based off your current tax rate, and the Woodlands has extremely low tax rates that everybody knows that, but it restricts your ability to generate revenue in the future because you're starting from such a low number. Tax rate wise. Correct, correct.
We can raise our water rates, but
You haven't had a tax increase since 1986. You paid off all of your debt in 2017. In 18, you dropped your tax rate.
Mhm.
This looks like our reserves only goes from 5.7 down to 5.4.
4.5 at the end of the year. That's the average. I would look at.
So we go from 4.8 to 4.5.
Yeah, I would look at the end, yeah.
That's 0.3 difference.
Oh, between the two segments.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it, you know, fairly confident in that group of all that, you know, it's all primarily driven by this one $750,000 repair. You got another 207,000 on sewer repair. But, you know, if you feel like it's highly unlikely you're gonna have another expense like that, then you use your reserve for that expense, and you count on next year being able to bank a little bit more of your revenue to be able to replace that a little bit. But who knows?
We don't know.
That's the crystal ball that none of us have.
Mhm.
We're banking money now, right? With the high sales.
For the current fiscal year,
Current fiscal year.
correct. It looks like it's projected at $663,000 or plus.
If we got a wet year next year, it could be the other direction.
But, and it'll grow for August, September, right? I mean, unless it starts raining.
Most
It
likely, yeah.
hasn't rained halfway through August, so August.
Uh.
I mean, it looks like we're looking at a 10% rate increase and a 20% increase in our tax bill. Right,
So
and a 7% increase in
Rates are
our
five.
rates.
Rates are 5. Yeah, 5.
Well,
what are the implications I mean, if we get 6 months into the next fiscal year and by charging a lower tax rate than recommended, what's the possibility? Or what happens if we get below, 3 months or 2 months reserves, then what do we do?
So if you're in a situation like that, and then you have another large emergency, next tax, you get that next slug of money in January, February of 24, then you would have to move quickly. I don't think this district, I can't recall if this district has a remaining ad valorem bond authorization, but assuming you don't, then you would have to move quickly to try.
Sell a bond.
to issue water revenue bonds, water sewer revenue bonds.
We don't want to do that.
That's your only other revenue lever.
Or jump out into a different rate.
Well, no, this is if we're already.
Mid-season, mid-year, I don't know that we could. Okay. I think we need to go that route. Discussion from anybody, other questions on the proposed tax rate?
Yeah, 4.3 million in remaining authorization. We have to see if it's still viable or stale. The AG, I can't remember if this before we talked about it, but other groups, it's come up about the AG now taking a position that older authorization that hasn't been used in a while, and a while is a bit squishy. But the AG is taking a position that that authorization becomes stale and can no longer be used. You have to go back to the authorization. So before you take that 4.3 to the bank, we have to do the homework to see if that's still viable or if that would be considered stale. I'm concerned about it.
I guess something that would help me feel more comfortable is some trend line data. It's nice to have current year or past year, but see what our tax rate was. And we've looked at this in the past. I don't have it in front of me. I don't remember it all. Tax rate and the usage rate over the last like 5 years or so. This is not good news for our consumers, but it's reality of what's happened in inflation.
Your retail water rate, I didn't mention this either earlier, your retail water rates have not changed since 2014. So it's been a while, 9 years. That's not, makes you feel back too much better, but it is a positive.
I think we need to think about how we feel about raising our tax bill by 20% in 1 year. I'm not sure what the alternatives are that keep us sound financially, but
I think the better way to package that is at $6 a month. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's still 20%.
I'm just looking. I'm looking at the river authorities budget and revenues. And we're about $2.5 million ahead now, and maybe another $2 million next month. So there's potential there for a refund, surplus funds or whatever it's called. I'm not sure what Mud 7's share of that would be.
I don't know what the pro rata share would be, that would not be until March of 24, when that would be discussed after the annual comprehensive financial report's done. So just keep in mind, it's not immediately come September 1 or October 1, you still got 6 months.
But it's still there.
It is. Now, if the revenue for the river authority in FY 24 is less than 90%, then it's not there, because by resolution, we keep that. So there is a good chance it'll be there, but just keep in mind, there is some risk there as well.
Any idea what Mud 7's share would be? What percentage of water use Mud 7 is?
It's on the sheet I sent you.
10%?
Last week, I don't recall. There's 11 buds.
I know, but I'm just looking for round numbers. 10% of 4.5 million is $450,000.
more than half of the
Yes.
think if that was a guaranteed thing, that would be,
7%.
that would change my opinion, but since
Yeah,
it's not guaranteed.
Well, but also if that number stays up, it's because usage is up, which means your numbers are gonna go better too. And that kind of goes back to the crystal ball. Is it gonna rain or not?
that just might get us through the hump, so I'm suggesting. Something to think about.
Yeah, you're in the sevens. You don't want to live in the fours and fives for sure. If that hadn't happened, you would, like I said earlier, you would be in decent shape, trending up. I wish we could crystal ball other breaks that may or may not happen. This is a big one just because of what it is, but you wouldn't typically have too many of these bigger ones. We'd like to plan for most of them.
This is 700,000 is Mud 7 share of that ditch. That's a pretty big project.
Some preliminary information from the engineer who's been looking at it. Budgetary versus.
So this. So we're gonna vote on this next month as well, on this tax rate.
We need to take a vote today to publish the notice. So if you're still obviously thinking about where you want to ultimately land. it's probably-
You can always go down next week. Come on.
If you want, you can go down.
All right, any further discussion on this? Not, then we need to vote to publish the recommended rate, and then we still have one more chance to walk it back next month if we want to. And, if we get another month of drought, then maybe we do that. Okay,
The recommendation comes from
Staff. Discussion on staff, since you don't have outstanding debt, it's straight off the budget.
So is it in, I'm just reading your letter. Does it say we recommend?
We provided two scenarios. The current rate and then to raise it to the maximum allowable.
I guess what I'm looking for is the word recommendation. Are you making a recommendation or are you just providing scenarios?
So for FAs, the traditional way that the recommendations are provided is they provide recommendations on the debt service. And then staff looks at and provides recommendation on the M&O side. So since we don't have the debt service side, I think that's why they have a recommendation right there. So Eric, I guess your recommendation would be published at the higher.
Yes.
So we have a recommendation from.
Anybody want to make that proposal?
Supposedly
Okay.
publish.
I'll second it. All in favor of publishing that we're gonna go with the recommended new higher tax rate, indicate by saying aye. Aye. None opposed.
The final voting is next month.
Well, all this is what we're publishing, not necessarily what we're doing. Thank you.
I assume there's
everyone.
a true up or as approved also publication. We only publish.
There's not actually a second publication. What's happened the last, at least year or two, I know maybe longer than that, is there's been an e-blast or some sort of a communication to customers about what your recommended tax rate is. That's done on a month by month basis. It's not a legal requirement, but there has been more outreach following the final adoption. So at least knows what the tax rate was.
All right, then let's move to agenda item number 10, receive regular monthly SJRA Woodlands Division report.
Anything? I don't have anything to cover on item number 10, but Dan and Connie are here to cover number 11, which is a presentation.
All right, item 11, we're gonna hear more about AC water pipe.
Okay, we want to warn you Back up, Mr. Sarah, in case we're gonna, this document, I don't want to blast your eyeballs. All right, there we go. All right, well, good evening. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Connie Curtis. I am the Director of Technical and Operational Services for SRA, and this is Dan Hildebrandt, the Tech Services Manager. So we're here today just to talk about the AC Waterline Replacement Program and some condition-based asset management. We've got 4 different things that we're going to kind of highlight today in an agenda. Project plan background, condition-based asset management, just a discussion about the different types of testing, and then some recommendations that SRA brings to the table, and then the next steps. So if you watched the trustee meeting, this is generally the same presentation. We took out some of the slides just to kind of keep it moving forward. It's about a 20-minute presentation, so we ask that you hold your questions till the end, and then we will keep rolling. So Dan will get us started here with the beginning.
Appreciate it. So project plan background. For everybody's sake, wanted to jump through a couple over the past 6-7 years, what we have gone through to come up to where we are today. So starting 2017, 2018, this is when internally to SRA with the Technical Services Department and the division, we identified a need for replacement of AC water lines. That aging infrastructure was coming upon us, and we want to proactively plan for that. So we looked at break history, the overall age of the lines, looked at the consequence of failures at a high level of where critical facilities were to if you had a break there. That would be a higher consequence of failure, and that worked into essentially developing a 10-year project plan that included AC waterline replacement projects. That 2018 10-year project plan was the first project plan that y'all saw those AC waterline replacements, and those prioritized within that plan. At that time, we used the best information we had to internally estimate the cost of that, and that started out at around $100 million. And that is just for the AC water lines. Moving forward, 2019, 2020, we started discussions, conversations with the audit committee, with the MUDs, acknowledging that this is going to be a significant investment. There would be rate impacts, and starting discussions on how we would fund such a program. Through those years, there was some small escalation in pricing just through inflation, internal adjustments, getting up to around $109 million. So 2021, 2022, this is when there was some significant efforts completed on the program. So first one being, we initiated design consultant for town center water line. That project has currently been funded through R&R funds up to this point, and we're at a 90% final design of that project. We hired a third-party consultant to develop a Woodlands Division water system 20-year capital improvement plan. We wanted to bring on a third-party consultant to really either verify or relook at what SRA did internally in terms of cost estimating and project prioritization for the AC waterline plan. The results of that was the consultant recommended a 10-year project plan for replacing all the AC water lines. The revised cost estimates at that point in time, based on the information they had, $149 million. So also coming out of that plan, that is where we came up with this 48 miles of AC water line replacement and the 11 proposed project segments associated with that. So I provided a handout that I think I left at everybody's place, 11 by 17 sheet, just so you have this for reference. Ultimately, the different colors are showing the 11 different proposed projects. Also with that 2021 plan, there was this table and the prioritization of the 11 segments. This is just here for just data that we can refer back to, but installation year, number of breaks, and how we prioritize those, along with how the consultant prioritize those. So moving forward, 2023, early this year, when SRA is going through their 10-year project planning, we acknowledge there's been a lot of escalation in pricing and materials and challenges with that on the market side, to where we wanted to bring in another third-party consultant to bring confidence to those estimates. We utilize the consultant that is helping us or is doing the design for the town center water line. We felt they were the most qualified, had the latest information, talking to vendors, talking to contractors, other projects they're involved in the region. And the revised cost estimate for the AC water line replacements is $200 million. And that is what was included and presented in April timeframe on the 10-year project plan. So today, want to touch a little bit more on the condition-based asset management discussion that has been going on over the recent months, specifically focusing on the asbestos cement water pipe. A similar type program could be utilized for future down the road when we get to PVC line replacement or other materials. So since April 2023, we have been presented with a number of engineering articles, some that we have come across, some that have been given to us by MUD directors, but we have reviewed those articles. We have discussed with multiple national experts, professional engineers that do this type of work around the country. Some of those have authored those engineering articles. Some have authored or participated in authoring AWWA manuals regarding condition-based assessment. We've brought in vendors to discuss destructive and non-destructive testing approaches, technologies that are out there. And we've discussed capital program approaches with other municipal entities. How are they approaching, similar type situations? So a couple examples there would be City of Baytown, City of Conroe, Austin, Lake Jackson, just to name a few. So 4 primary pieces of an asset-based management system or condition-based asset management system is opportunistic sampling, both uncontrolled, controlled, destructive testing, non-destructive testing, engineering tests. So we'll walk through those in the next couple slides. Uncontrolled, when pipes break. So recently we have gone through and revised our protocols for when we have a pipe break in terms of how we collect data. We have a multiple page template set up now to where we're collecting specific data every time a water line breaks. That is technical data on, location, size of the diameter of the water line, what does the construction materials look like in terms of bedding or, the construction around that pipeline, to the costs associated with the impacts to residents on if there's downtime in service. Is there additional costs or impacts or damage to private property due to the water line break? All that's being captured in our asset management programming and location data in GIS. So we want to continue to grow and build that data as these breaks happen. We're also looking at taking, when those breaks occur, samples of pipe and sending them off to, say, a laboratory for more destructive testing and obtain data at those points in time. So more controlled opportunistic sampling. Oh, lost the clicker. Do that.
Use it. I think it's broken.
I think we lost the battery.
Sure.
All right. So 2 examples of controlled sampling. One, we've talked a lot about town center water line. As we're replacing that line, we can pull samples of the AC pipe out and get those laboratory tested. One that hasn't been talked about as much is the Harper's Landing water line extension. So this is a small project where we're adding a water line to create essentially a loop, an extension. This is over east of 45, MUD 39, Trade Center, Parkway area. One opportunity here is the line that we're going to be tapping that new line into is an AC line, part of one of the 11 segments that is proposed. So we could take a piece of that pipe and send it off to be laboratory tested. I do want to add Harper's Landing water line extension. That has been R&R funded up to this point. It's at 100% design, and we are looking to put that out for proposals for construction in the very near future. So destructive testing. Destructive testing, we're going to have to shut down segments of the pipeline. And in order to maintain service, we would have to have some above ground bypass to maintain service to the customers. We'd be utilizing a contractor to dig down, excavate to the pipeline, remove a section from joint to joint, which is approximately 10 to 13 feet. We're going to be sending that off to a laboratory for a series of testing. We can also have the ability to bring in a geotech consultant, study the soil, the embedment, and the construction around that original pipe. So testing of the pipe. When we're doing destructive testing, that is both physical and chemical, to where there's a number of chemical tests that can be run all the way to the physical side of crushing the pipe. Ultimately, you're getting results regarding remaining wall thickness, strength, hardness, internal, external degradation that is happening on that pipe sample. On the non-destructive testing side, again, the most common technology that we have been presented with is acoustical testing, to where you would have to hook instruments approximately 700 feet apart to the pipe, potentially on utilizing some hydrants, but more than likely that we will have to dig down, excavate to the pipeline, shut it down, and install these sensors on the pipe. So during those shutdowns, again, we would be looking at having a bypass to maintain service above ground. What that acoustical testing is ultimately providing for output is an average velocity over, say, 700 feet of pipe. So there's pros and cons to destructive testing. There's pros and cons to non-destructive. So if you had a small section of very degraded pipe in that 700 feet and the rest is fine, you may not see that very well in the non-destructive testing. But through that velocity measurement, you're going to get an average stiffness and an average degradation of that pipe over that distance. So engineering analysis. We're looking at doing all this testing, all this data collection. What are we going to do with it? Who's going to evaluate that? How does that help us in setting up a prioritized program? The engineering analysis needs to be done regardless of the type of testing, but you're doing it on the front end and bringing on an expert consultant to help us set up the program. And then on the tail end, after data is collected, they would be doing the analysis. They've talked a lot about predictive modeling that you could input the data into, but you're going to have a number of different metrics. It would not be just straight age and number of breaks. You're going to have all this other data that could be metrics in developing a prioritized plan. There might be different weighting put on those metrics. What are the trigger points on any one of those that says, all right, now is time to replace this pipe? So that is what that engineering analysis on the back end is going to lead up to a revised, prioritized project plan for replacing the AC pipes. So I want to pass it off to Connie to get into a little bit more detail on how much testing we do, what are the costs, what are the recommendations.
All right, thanks so much, Dan. So with all of this, really the question is how can we come about a budget number and some program to come up with? And so we kind of went about it, had all the conversations with a bunch of the experts across the nation and came up with what we would call maximum sort of buffers or a corral to put us in. And so from the destructive side of things, if I hit the right way, that'd be great. 1 sample per mile is kind of a rule of thumb that they gave us. If you assume town center is not included in the maximum number, so there was 48 miles of pipe that was from that 2021 11 projects. If you took the 3 miles out, we'd have 45 miles, 45 total locations. So as we continue to look at this is roughly what 45 dots look like. So that's 45 proposed test locations. Please don't hold us to where those locations are. This is really just for schematic purposes so that you could see how many that it would be. When you look at non-destructive testing, there's not as clear a rule of thumb as 1 sample per mile. It's something more about judgment based on your system. So once again, town center not being included, 25 miles and 45 miles of pipeline is really what the experts have kind of helped guide us to for now as a maximum to consider. So the black squiggle lines here are roughly 25 miles of pipeline. Please, once again, don't hold us to where those squiggles are, but this would just generally show you what that quantity could look like. I want to point out town center is this green section right in here for anybody who's wanting to find it. And so you don't see any squiggles or red dots there.
So you've rotated your map 90 degrees.
Yes, sir. So apologies for that. Let me go back to it. North is that direction. Yeah, so that was the best way for us to get it on the screen. Engineering analysis, you're going to have to do that before and after, like what Dan highlighted. So you're gonna have to do it regardless of anything that we do on this analysis. So just wanting to note that it is part of the proposed testing as a proposed plan. So what's our recommended combination? We're not recommending to do all 45 test holes in all 25 miles. So you're gonna have to have the engineering analysis. Half destructive testing, 23 holes, and half non-destructive testing, 13-mile, is really kind of a happy medium. We've talked to some consultants who say you need to do more destructive or less non-destructive or vice versa. Some say go do the destructive first, some say go do non-destructive first. So we really need to work through and figure out who the consultant's going to be that's helping us. But at the end, once again, like Dan mentioned, doing the destructive and non-destructive testing and the engineering analysis will give us that prioritized and scheduled project plan that we're looking for. So what this could look like, once again, if you combine half the red dots and half the black, you may have some red dots that are by themselves. You may have some black lines that are by themselves, and you may have some that are combined together. So we'll just come up with the consultant's assistance, the best proposed test locations and plan to put together. This prioritized project plan will get updated. And so even without collecting any further data, pipelines are going to continue to break. And so we want to just note that the study we did in 2021, it's not a stagnant document. This is something that we would continue to update regardless of gathering any more data. So we would be looking at this, and if for some reason, like Westlake got a little bit more important than Panther Creek or got more important than Sawmill, we would readjust as we got more data. So, but for now, based on the information we had in 2021, this is the best plan that we have. Once we receive any of the updates from the assessments that we would be doing with destructive and non-destructive testing, this project plan will get updated. So with that, there is an asterisk here. We've hit on this a couple of times that we need consultant recommendations. So we need a partner in this that's an expert in this to help us figure out exactly what we need to do. So we need to have a request for qualifications for consulting engineers, for contractor to do the excavation in the temporary water, and a testing lab. So these are steps that we're going to need to have once we get some direction from the MUDs. How long is it going to take and how much is it going to cost is a really important thing that we want to highlight here. Estimated schedule. So once again, from a maximum perspective, 4 years is really kind of what we're hearing is how long that it could take. It could take a little less than that, but we're wanting to make sure that we're not overstating how long this could take or how short that it could be. Hypothetically, if we start in January 2024, we could anticipate being complete by January 2028. And the estimated cost would be $3.5 million, which includes the engineering analysis, the contractor, the geotech borings, the destructive testing, and the non-destructive testing. And that would be for that half and half scenario. What I will tell you is if we went all in on destructive or all in on non-destructive, it doesn't move the needle a ton. It moves it like a couple $100,000. So the next steps that we're looking at here, Dan mentioned this, but opportunistic testing. So any future breaks that we have, SRA is committed to making sure we're continuing to collect data more consistently and in a better format for us to continue to prioritize that list. So we're going to do it for any projects we have coming up that we're replacing, as well as any future line breaks. So right now we're discussing the condition-based assessment at all the August board meetings. So we're going to do this for all 10 and 11 that we've got. So I want to pause here. What this says is at the September MUD meetings for the MUDs to consider and take action to approve a $25 million bond funding. This is what we presented to the trustees. So we wanted to bring this to the MUDs in the same format. But what the trustees asked for us to do was to present to the August MUD meeting, which we're doing, and then to gather questions and be prepared to present at the September MUD meetings to answer any questions that we have from the MUDs. So, and then for the MUDs to vote in September and to give their trustee direction of how to vote at the October trustee meeting. So making sure I got that right, Brian, you're looking up, did I get it right?
Well, the MUDs would ultimately be approving the amendment to each of their agreements with the River Authority. I presume that would be in October.
Yes. But the action will not be taken until October, I guess is the point, right? So,
Each MUD votes independently of the trustees.
Correct. Correct, because it's a contract amendment to do the debt financing. So it's a contract amendment between each MUD and River Authority for their respective water sewer agreements. And this is a format we did before, and some of y'all want to get the financing, it was, I think, 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And we had the same sort of format. It set the parameters for the bond issue, rough par amount, and it was an amendment to those agreements.
What are the implications of all except one MUD approve this? 2
Well,
months.
yeah, I mean, we can kind of go into any number of what ifs. I mean, at the worst case scenario, everybody says no, and the River Authority ultimately deem it to be essential, or some particular repair to be essential. We've talked about this before. It's either cash finance through higher, significantly higher water and sewer rates, or there's a cash call in the worst case scenario. Now, I think in 40+ years, I'm not aware of there having been that sort of a scenario, but that's the worst case. So if you end up saying, well, we're going to move forward with debt financing and all the rest approved and one doesn't, then presumably there would be I can't speak for the River Authority, we would have to determine what their solution would be, but
Ultimately, the River Authority Board of Directors, the people that vote to issue the bonds, right?
that's correct.
It's not the MUDs.
The MUDs have to amend the contract to give the board of the River Authority the ability to issue those bonds. Otherwise, the only revenue mechanisms for the River Authority under the existing contract is higher water sewer rates to cash fund it, or a cash call, or some combination of the two. So this
Can we
good
turn
debt
this off?
financing allows for the districts to have a smoother expense plane as opposed to sawtooth.
I have a few more little things to say here and then we'll.
I guess, Brian, can you clarify, is there an action item for the trustees in October?
No, not necessarily unless they ask for one. They asked for one in September to move forward on the schedule that y'all discussed, which is comments or questions in September,
And then-
vote by the MUDs in October. So unless the trustees ask for some other action item in October, there wouldn't be a trustee action item in October.
So next steps, the final piece here, what makes up this 25 million, I want to break that out here for you. So construction of town center water line, so that project is at 90% design. Estuary plans to perform the opportunistic testing. So we'll have pits that are already open. We plan to test that pipe just to give us the data that we would need for the rest of the asset management plan. That project's construction is estimated at 15.5 million. Preliminary engineering for North Town Center and Grogan's Mill water line. So that's the next project. That's the next priority, $2 million preliminary engineering. For Panther Creek area water line, that's the third in the priority right now. That's $2 million. And then the condition-based asset management is $3.5 million. So add into that capitalized interest at $2 million. That's where the 25 million comes from. What we're proposing here and our recommendation from Estuary is to kind of run two parallel things. This is what a lot of municipalities do if they choose to do condition-based asset management. They continue to move forward with the priorities using the desktop review that they've done and not lose time. But in the meantime, they continue to collect data to help them prioritize for the projects coming in the future. So we're proposing to kind of move forward with that two-pronged approach of, we think gaining more data and making sure that we're not pulling pipe out of the ground too soon makes sense, but we don't really want to be losing time on the other projects that are necessary that we see that are coming. So that's what A, B, and C are one path, and then D is that condition-based assessment. So this is the end of our presentation here. I've got one more slide that says questions, but we'll sit here on this next step slide for y'all.
You can turn it off.
Okay.
We have copies. I know Brad's got several questions and comments. I had a couple thoughts as we're going through this. Because I look at the next steps. You know, I was thinking about this at the trustee meeting last week. It may not have to be 25 million to still move forward. You know, if we did the 15 million to fund the replacement for town center. And does that also include that Harper's Landing pipe?
That's all our.
So if we do the 15 million, you're gonna get all those new pipes plus the Harper's Landings pipe, which is already in the you're gonna be doing that project anyways. And I guess my thought is, how much can we learn from all the pipe that we pull out of town center? You know, what if it's all good?
Yeah, and I think that, if anything else, you know, if we're adapting and we're looking at things, that asset management mindset is not a bad thing to have. And so if the MUDs wanted something lesser than the 3.5 million, what we've kind of been asked for is what would be a comprehensive asset management plan to bring, and this is what it would be.
So what if there's like a $500,000 plan to analyze all that pipe? And then we come back and go, okay, well, it's very questionable at best. Now we really do need to start paying for, you know, engineering work on these other projects. We really do need to, you know, pay $2 or $3 million to assess these other areas. But if we go through there and everything looks good,
Right.
seems to me like that would be a good reason to slow it down.
It's an indicator. So it's more data that tells us that in that area, it was maybe fine. The other places around the.
That would be 2 areas that we would have a look at least.
We've got 6 well, you got 1 data point, yeah, out on 242 north in that area. So
Plus any opportunistic testing.
Flood City, yeah, I know, yeah, the Harper's Landing, yeah. You can do however much assessment you want. Some cities don't do any. So many of the cities that Dan kind of mentioned, they don't have any asset management plans at all.
I don't think anybody's suggesting that.
Right, but from that perspective, you can simplify this down of where, okay, if y'all wanted to look at us and say, here's $500,000 a year, or here's $200,000 a year, go do a handful of these and continue to collect data and refine. That is an option as well. We would need an engineering, you know, firm to help us set that program up appropriately. But instead of forcing, you know, the 4 years and the $3.5 million, there are different scenarios that we could run through. But right now, what we were asked was what would a comprehensive study look like? And so that's what we've brought.
Well, let's clarify that. That we were asked. So you think the Railroad Authority was asked to develop a maximum spend plan?
I believe that I was asked to bring back what it would be to reprioritize it effectively and efficiently, and that is what we've brought.
So you don't think you can do that without maximum spend?
I think that what we need to do, what we tried to do was to corral it, Brad, honestly, was we need to get a consultant on board to help us understand if there is lesser than that. Consultants are not necessarily going to give you a full scope and a full fee unless they know that they are going to get to do the work, and we're not allowed to ask them for that. So right now, we did the best that we could to try to pull together a budget number. If we can do it for less than $3.5 million in 4 years and feel like that we get a better set of data, we will do it. But we've also been getting pushback that, you know, we need a lot of data. So we were trying to come up with a plan that really helps to give a true look at the entire system, not just one section, but the entire system.
So I think you've misinterpreted your feedback. Okay, I don't think you want maximum data. You want data that's impactful enough to impact your decision. Okay, you potentially can impact your decision with a little bit of data, or you may need a lot of data. You know, our ongoing conflict is a cost benefit analysis. And when you ask for money, what do I get for it? So I see a request for $3.5 million, but I don't know what I get for it. So if I spend $3.5 million, do I defer spending that $200 million out in another 5 years? Is there 90%?
We won't know until we get the data, Brad. I mean, that until it's all processed. I mean, that's truly.
So what you're asking though is to spend $3.5 million, but not change your spending at all.
Yes. So I mean, we're wanting to run 2 parallel paths, but the fact of the matter is that right now we're focused on AC pipeline. There's PVC that comes next that we also potentially would need to add into the fold after this that could dovetail in and need to be replaced before AC.
Okay.
The $200 million is an estimate. It's something that in 17, 18, the audit committee and company asked us to kind of do our best to come back with a 10-year plan. And so we did. many cities see one project at a time. They're not going to see this bigger picture of what is anticipated to be needed for replacement. And so we've done our best for this, Brad, with the information that we have.
Have you reviewed my questions I sent you?
I've looked them over, but I've not come prepared tonight to respond. We haven't had many days
So
to.
you'll respond to those in September?
Yes, sir. I think my response to Eric was we just needed to circle up and talk about how to
Yes,
respond.
I was hoping by getting to you might have some overall comments by now.
You have a couple of maybe more pressing
Well,
questions you wanted to highlight tonight and not go through everything?
What we're trying to do is balance the risk of having lines break and not be able to maintain them
Right,
and spending money that we don't need to be spending and pulling lines out of the ground that are still in good service.
agreed.
So, this goes back to the original 50-year basis that you last on Wednesday, you said was related to an EPA study.
So I
Like
want to
this-
I want to clarify.
Should we play the tape?
Yeah. What I said, and if I didn't say it this way, this is what I meant, Brad. We do not have a document that clearly states from 2015 where the 50 years comes from. You go talk to experts across the greater Houston area and across the country, and their gut reaction on AC pipe is 50 years. Okay? So
Can you,
I can produce documents from that 2015 timeframe that could say 50 years, but I'm not sure that's what we based it on. So I'm not really willing to go and provide that to you.
can you provide me current documents that say 50 years?
There are documents out there that reference that the pipeline age to 50 years is really when people start to get nervous. There are Water Federation, Research Federation documents that, you have to have special, you have to pay the subscription for that. So I've received those through some consultants. So it's not something that we necessarily have that membership for. So I would need to ask for permission to share that. But at the end of the day, there are documents out there that do say 50 to 60 to 70 to 80 to 100 to 140 years. It just depends on which one you choose to look at and the
Can I just make
engineering
one
judgment.
interjection? I think we've gotten to the point where everybody agrees that the 50 years is under question. I mean, would you guys even agree that now there's enough stuff floating around that's maybe,
The 50 years is a conservative number. It is the most conservative number.
but we just don't know.
No, we
We
don't.
don't know.
We don't. Our
And so
our
that,
understanding of the construction methods utilized in the Woodlands are similar to those that were utilized in the city of Houston. The city of Houston got about 50 years of life out of their AC pipe before they started having significant failures. So we're watching ours begin to fail. We're starting to get nervous. So it's something that is from a policy perspective for y'all to tell us if our level of service is good enough that we continue to risk it. But for us right now, what we've been hearing is we're a transmission system and the risk is too great on some of these pipelines for us to continue to have failures.
my preference is to see how much we can learn from town center, from opportunistic testing and from the line across the freeway down there at Harper's Landing. And from that, see if it helps us understand the problem better before we spend the whole 25 million. I'm more supportive of, let's spend the 15.5 and get rolling on that, because that's already in process. And not spend the extra 3.5, just spend what we gotta spend to get enough expertise to test the pipes that we're gonna have access to over the next year. Seems to me like that's some middle ground that doesn't commit us to $200 million, but does give us more information, and maybe it sets us back a year.
Yeah, I mean,
The town center is planned to go to construction in January of 2025.
Mm.
And
Like it set us back 2
we're
years.
assuming that construction would be, that
it's gonna take a year,
and a half, a
year.
year or so.
yeah, to complete.
When does the Harper's Landing pipe get opened up?
I would say if we get that advertised in the next couple months, it'd be sometime spring of next year.
So it's a shorter pipeline.
I mean, going back to the original, if you look at your data on slide 9, you show the total breaks for 2000 to 2023. The most simple metric I've asked for is, could you show that in the breakdown by year? You know, if you show me that they've gone from 1 break a year to 5 breaks a year, or your oldest lines have the most breaks in them, that makes me more supportive. But if your lines have, they're breaking 1 break a year over the last 10 years or 20 years, and there's no growing trend there, I'm saying I don't see an issue. The level of service we have today is fine. If they continue to break as they've broken over the last 20-year trend, why replace them? And that seemed like a really simple, thing to do. And and the other one we talked about is breaks per year per 100 miles.
Right, and I think that I want to be clear on that. The industry standard for that is for distribution systems, not transmission lines. And so the risk that is associated with lines that are just moving water is different. And so that is very clearly stated in the AWWA manuals that guide how some of that is set up. So it's just something that's there. We can pull that out and show you, but I would also tell you that many of the folks that we've talked to have said that the way our system is set up is something to where they wouldn't necessarily use those as their standard.
You included in this month's package article about University or the City of Houston. It's clear one of the things they are looking at is their water loss, like 20% water loss. Okay. They talked about some metrics for water loss as an indication of the quality of your lines. How many lines you got broken? We're way under what they've got. And we are even saying our water loss is improving, partially due to our accounting, but there's no indication from our water loss data that our lines are deteriorating.
I would say that I hope that we stay way far away from City of Houston's numbers. They are chasing problems that they've been chasing for years.
There's other metrics besides, City of Houston agrees they're on the bad place. But it talks about what is expected for good service. Houston's way beyond that.
Right.
Okay, we're way under that. But again, trend lines, are our losses increasing over time? That would indicate that we've got deteriorating lines.
And I think that we have a lot of varying opinions of what the level of service should be and what is allowed and what is good and what is bad. And so where we sit with level of service is when there's a failure, we get a lot of pushback because there's a lot of impact. And so we can look at some of those things, Brad. I think that it's something that we need to have some conversations with Eric about the time and how much time it takes for us to pull some things together. And that's some of the conversations that we're having. But I don't necessarily think that we can't give you some of those answers. It's something that I would prefer to have a professional engineer that does this to help us understand before we're just blanketly showing information that could be misinterpreted.
Talk about need for a professional engineer. I believe we're talking to two professional engineers, aren't we?
You are, that are not experts in this field. Like I'm a pipeline engineer. I can design these pipelines, but I am not an asset management specialist. We have read so much material in the last 3 to 4 months to get us up to speed, to help us to talk knowledgeably, but we still need the experts to help us. I really know the balance of what I know and what I don't know, and I'm getting to that edge, Brad, of we need help. And they're not going to give it to us for free for much longer.
Sure. You've got HDR, I think, is who did the MESA study.
And we've
You
called
got
them, we've talked to them. I was on the phone with them on
You got
Friday.
an open work order with them or a purchase order with them.
Not
Okay.
for this work,
Well, you got them under contract.
not for the Woodlands.
The River Authority does.
But you gotta look at the different budgets, where the contracts and the money's coming from.
Well, there's experts you can talk to that can give you guidance on this. And I think
And
we're
we
50 years is unacceptable.
Any other questions? If y'all have more questions, you can send them Eric's way. And the intent is for us to be prepared to answer questions in September.
I would like to see written responses before the meetings in September. If I could.
Hold up there and we will let you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Clearly, the AC water pipe is a big deal, and I think everybody wants to get it right as best we can. So we appreciate everybody trying to work together on this. All right, so that was item 11. Item 12 is to receive update regarding status of Bear Branch and Panther Branch and research forest drainage improvements.
Brett Rayleigh, our Lake Conroe Division Manager, will talk about that item.
Hello.
Thank
We had a meeting, a progress meeting a week ago today, met with LJA and our staff. And Mike, Jim, everyone there to make that meeting. We basically talked about modeling. On the modeling side, they calibrated their models well against historical storm, the major historical storms. And we also talked about geometry of the channel, proposed channel, alternatives for the geometry, and alternatives for geometry of the ponds, the mitigation ponds. There was good discussion. Mike had some ideas, Ed had some ideas, and so LJ is taking those and putting them into the mix with their alternatives designs, and we'll have a progress meeting September 12th. And they will report on their draft analysis on August 31st.
When could we expect to see earth movers out there doing the work?
Probably 15 months. Because we're just now getting statement qualifications for the engineering. We didn't start that because we don't have the spillway results. And so it'll take a year, 15 months.
Are you talking about the drainage project or dam project?
Excuse me.
Well, the
On
Bear
that
Branch,
project-
Panther Branch and research forest drainage improvement.
That
Drainage projects,
It could easily be 15 to 24 months.
yeah, that's farther out.
Probably a summertime thing, you would think, right?
Definitely not during the rainy season. If we ever get one.
Right. Any questions on that one?
One other thing on Bear Branch. We had some game cameras installed out of Bear Branch Dam. These are some photos for y'all to look at. They're cellular based and they send, and they're motion detected, so they send photos back to us. This is some activity that people just walking through the area. Here's another set.
I would just add that we can log in and watch it live as well, which we do periodically. It just so happened today, we were looking at some shots, and we had a consultant, a dam safety consultant was at the dam. So the camera caught a picture of them flying their drone, so we caught a picture of their drone. Our camera, but I think we'll be able to identify some dams. What we got.
So essentially, these are under our cellular plan with the River Authority. We've put up 10 cameras out under that plan. It's not the comprehensive, very expensive thing that we talked about a year ago. So this is a very modest way of kind of monitoring. So we're adding that to our monthly report. Give you all the things that have occurred.
Is it posted that it's under video surveillance?
Not yet.
No. We have the still camera.
I mean, people know they're being photographed when they go through that.
We don't have a sign out saying that they're being.
Would that help deter people from going through that?
Then they go look for your cameras and steal them.
Or vandalize.
Yeah. It may not help.
Ultimately, it'd be nice if we could quote catch some vandals and have, law enforcement go over there and just say, hey, look, we catch a couple of people, make some examples, hopefully we'll knock it down.
We'd update you on that aspect of it.
Thank you. All right, item 13, receive update on the SGRA led Spring Creek detention study. Dan?
So not really much to update to this month on that. Continuing just discussions with the solar company, setting up meetings with elected officials to brief them on the project and the current status. And then still planning for that public meeting, March, April timeframe of next year. That would be the third public meeting that we posted for that project. So there'll be more to come, probably over the next few months, but that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Dan on that? Item 14, receive attorney's report.
No
Yates.
journal items this evening. I happy to answer questions if you have them. Otherwise, I do need to cover items 15 and 16.
And let's move to item 15.
Item 15, the amendment to the district information form. So on the Google Drive, we've got the new form of notice to purchasers, and that document is provided to folks when they buy property in the district. The form of notice to purchasers is attached as an exhibit to the district information form. So that's why we have a district information form. That's to replace that exhibit. In the legislative session, House Bill 2816 was passed. We talked about that over the course of the legislative session. It updated the form of notice to purchasers to be a little more reader friendly for lay folks. The language that goes into that notice is in the water code, bit clunky and not very user friendly for people to read. So we worked with the legislature to get that a little more streamlined. It says what your tax rate is, how many bonds you've had authorized, how many bonds you've issued. Also that we're in the city of Houston's ETJ and within the Woodlands Township. So we've updated that for all of our district clients, including here in the Woodlands. That bill does become effective September the 1st. And so we need to get it in place this month. For efficiency purposes, I would have rather waited to do this until next month because we're going to have the same item on the agenda to update your form to include your new tax rate. So you'll see the same agenda item 2 months in a row. That's why. And do you need a motion on 15?
Right. And just to clarify that on these pages 35 through, oh, we're not doing that one yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
this one's on.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the amended and restated district information form.
Right.
Anybody like to second that? Got a second? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. None opposed. Good deal. Thank you, Brian.
Next
16.
item, 16, policy number DIR 20. This relates to House Bill 2815 that also passed during the legislative session. We refer to as the Mud Omnibus Bill. Had a lot of cleanup items in that bill. One of them was to update the fees of office that is paid to directors for each day of service that they render for the district. That number has been $150 per day for probably 20 plus years. It hasn't been adjusted for inflation or cost of living. So House Bill 2815 tied director per diems to what state legislators are paid, and that is set by the Texas Ethics Commission. It's currently $221. So we have pulled that language from House Bill 2815 and put it into the district's policy. So that way, when the Ethics Commission updates the fees for legislators, it will automatically flow through to your director fees of office. And we're going to come back and do these amendments however often the Ethics Commission updates the fees. It's still capped, as we probably talked about before. It's still capped on an annual basis at $7,200 for a fiscal year. I don't think that's an issue for this board. And also, when we opened up the policy, went ahead and added language about virtual participation in conferences. Back when this policy was first put together in the early 2000s, there was no such thing. But in the post-COVID world, there's a lot of options now to participate either in person or virtually, such as AWBD. So we wanted to add language in the policy to make it clear that directors can be compensated for participating virtually in those sorts of conferences. And I think that covers it on the on policy, happy to answer questions if you have.
So if we approve this, which I'm not suggesting we wouldn't, then this would just become a consent agenda item, and it's 221, whether you're gonna go to Austin and go to a conference or whether you're gonna sit at home and watch it on your
Correct.
Zoom.
Any per diems, including I think today's, would be approved at the then current rate, which is under consent item number 7.
Okay. Any discussion on the new per diem rates and the rules associated with those? You get a motion to approve the amended policy DIR 20? Then I will make that motion that we approve it. Can I get a second? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. No opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item 17, review and act on the resolution in support of Jace Houston.
The other mud that was looking at or considering doing it has tabled and deferred it. So they will not be presenting it. If that changes your mind, but there are no other muds.
Okay,
I took that as an action to work to try to revise something that we might agree to.
That's what I was
You
thinking.
know, it was clear that nobody else was going to do it. Just drop it.
Okay, you got it.
Jace has moved on. We already, trustees issued
Right.
something in favor of support of Jace.
Understood.
And Eric and I talked and I just didn't think it was real.
Everybody okay with moving forward on that? With just letting that issue go?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to item 18. Receive and or act on the general manager's report. I don't guess there's anything we have to act on, sir.
There is not, and I don't really have any general items as well, other than like to give John the opportunity to update you on the public outreach that we are doing.
I apologize, the board did not make it in the main pack, so. All right, here.
Thank you.
Here we go. I'll make this brief. We've been at it for a long time tonight. I'll hit the highlights here. We're about to enter the fourth quarter of our strategic plan, so we're going to see a heightened focus on infrastructure, financial aspects, rates, and so forth as we go through September, October, November. We've had some encouraging data come in on website visitation. We continue to trend upward. We've been strong all year, and that trend continues as we look at monthly page views as a form of gauging that. We're up over 30% over last year and more so than the 5-year average. Very encouraging. Our weekly e-newsletter also continues to trend up as far as the open rate, number of people that are engaging with that. You're going to see more material on high water bills, right? We're getting a lot of feedback from customers right now. Why is my water bill so high? Because you're using more water in most cases, right? Answer reasons. So, but people just don't pay attention until I guess it reaches a certain threshold, whatever that is for them. So when they come to us, the first place we take them is to WaterSmart, right? And so we help them see that they've got a tool right at their fingertips to help them understand their water use better and manage that water use. And get leak alerts, get high use alerts so they're not surprised by high bills. That's an excellent tool. So as you're talking to customers out there, keep that in mind. If you can point them in one direction, if they need help, they can simply call us and we'll walk them through it in a matter of a minute or two and have a great tool right at their hands. I am going to start including a in-person outreach calendar each month. Each month's report. So you can see that there at the bottom of page 2, we've got a number of events lined up. We'll be adding to those as more come online. Fall's big time for that. Of course, you're always welcome, encouraged to join us out there if you want to engage with customers, your feedback. Talk with folks, that's a great way to do it. So these events. And you'll note that we are sponsoring multiple events there. Page 3, you'll see some examples of some of our current marketing. Lots of statistics here. I'm not going to go into those. Of course, always happy to answer questions if you do have them on those. But I really just want you to see that we do track this stuff pretty closely. We're always looking to improve our ROI and make sure that we are hitting all of our target markets in the best and most cost-effective way possible. And we're going to be doing more systematic evaluation of all that here in another month or two as we near the end of our current strategic plan. And finally, you'll note on this coming month's water bill that we have a little redesign of that. We're trying to make a little bit better use of the real estate there to get messages across and help folks better understand how we arrive at their water bill. So watch for that. With that, any questions? Great, thank
You
you.
did a great job. Thank you. All right, number 19 is the Woodlands Water Trustees Report, and I would say the hot topic was the AC pipe, and it'll continue to be a hot topic until we figure that one out. There was some additional budget review and closed session items. But the big thing was the AC pipe. Item 20 and 21, do we have any closed session topics? Thank you. Item 22, just
Question on the GM minutes. I think the AC water line doesn't reflect what Brian just said was the work process that's going to happen. Because it says it will be moved to a vote by the trustees in October. And that was my understanding at the meeting, but that's not what my current understanding is. Page 44. Looks like we got a
Correct, that should be over by the MUDs in October, that last line, the basic water line section.
yeah, so I don't. Yeah. Maybe that's of interest to the other. It's because the trustees left with that impression.
Trustees can vote if they want to give, as a signal to the MUDs, but ultimately it's the MUDs that have to be contracted.
Yeah, but the MUDs are under no obligation to follow.
Correct, that's what I'm saying, they can do it as a symbolic signal to the MUDs, but.
okay. Item 22, discuss matters for placement on future agenda. As far as your letter to the SJRA, that'll be your option. When they have their, when the SJRA gives their report, that'll be kind of your opportunity to quiz them on their response.
They got my questions. They're not going to respond to in a second.
Else? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.